Afghanistan presidential elections and its effect on the Indo-Afghan relationship. Now, with the declaration of preliminary election results, Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani appears all set for a second term in office. However, his main rival, Dr. Abdullah, has rejected the result and is expected to file an appeal. Polling to elect the new president of Afghanistan took place on 25th of September this year, with lowest voter turnout since 2001. According to the preliminary results declared recently, Ashraf Ghani has secured 50.64% votes and Dr. Abdullah won 39.52% votes. Now, the Independent Election Commission of Afghanistan, which has the responsibility of conducting these polls, has said that the final results will be announced in about 40 days after it has dealt with all the complaints. So what are the possible scenarios for government formation in Afghanistan right now, and how will it affect India-Afghanistan relations? For more on this, we have with us a distinguished panel of guests today. Let me first introduce the guests, beginning with Mr. Ashok Sajjanhar. We also have with us Mr. Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation, and Retired Major General Ashwani Kumar Sivacha, the Foreign Affairs expert with us. Let me begin with you, Mr. Sajjanhar, and let's try and understand. This looks like a repeat of what happened around 5 years ago. Power tussle between these two gentlemen who have been, contesting for the post of president in Afghanistan. The preliminary results are out, but the present situation and the scenarios which are there, how does it look like to you that it might unfold from here onwards as far as the final government formation in this Afghanistan is concerned?
You're right, Vishal. There are some similarities, but there are also some differences to what happened in 2014. When the elections took place on the 28th of September this year, then both the parties, both the sides, both President Ashraf Ghani as well as the CEO Abdullah, both of them said that they had won. Of course, they could not advance any evidence to support their contention. But very recently, when the Election Commission has come out with the results, and as you mentioned, a little more than 50% going to Ashraf Ghani and a little less than 40% going to Abdullah. So Abdullah has, as was expected, challenged. But I think one difference is that here at least we have one candidate, that is President Ashraf Ghani, who has scored more than 50%. Because if there was no candidate who had scored more than 50%, a runoff would have taken place, as it did take place in the case of 2014. So this is the difference, that at least one candidate out of the 13 candidates who contested has got more than 50%. Now, of course, it needs to be borne in mind that these are preliminary results. There was initially it was said that about 2.7 million voters had exercised their franchise. This is a country of about 37 million people. It has only a little more than 9 million registered voters. Out of that, even if 2.7 million had exercised their franchise, it was a low percentage. But the Election Commission has been looking at the results and it has been paring down. So first from 2.7 million, it came down to 2.1 million, saying that, about 600,000 were fraudulent votes. After that, it has brought it further down to 1.8 million votes. And out of that, we see that about 900,000 votes have been in favor of Ashraf Ghani and a little more than 700,000 votes in favor of Abdullah. Now, Abdullah has said that there is fraud to the tune of 300,000 votes. Now, if the Election Commission goes into it and comes up with a verdict that there is some basis, some truth in what Abdullah is charging, then the results could change. But that having been said, there is a lot of uncertainty. At this moment, what Afghanistan needs, we have the background of US-Taliban talks and so many other developments. What Afghanistan today needs is certainty and not further continuation of uncertainty, because the last experiment in which Ashraf Ghani became the president and Abdullah was the CEO.
The unity government.
The unity government. This was a deal that was brokered by the then Secretary of State John Kerry. Today, nothing of that sort can happen. Abdullah is not interested in this. Ashraf Ghani has also said that he is not willing to go in for a unity government with, a number 2 for the next 5 years. So I think what Afghanistan, what the region and what India needs today is a certainty, and at least the preliminary estimates seem to give more than 50% to the President Ashraf Ghani. And let's see as to what happens going forward.
Okay, Mr. Bansal, your views on the situation right now, because it's quite interesting there. And while everybody is asking for peace in the region and ensuring that there is stability and certainty, but then the situation also involves, other elements like Taliban who are strongly opposed to this entire election process.
See, Afghanistan actually needs a good election, because if Afghans realize that they can change the regimes by ballot, I think the violence levels would come down. Unfortunately, last 2 elections have both been under cloud. And as Ambassador Sajjan said, the advantage this time is that Ashraf Ghani, unlike the last time, has got a clear majority. Last time what had happened in first round, Abdullah was way ahead of Ashraf Ghani actually. It was in second round where Ashraf Ghani not only surpassed him, actually Abdullah's vote share actually came down from what he had got in first round. And that's why there were far more credible allegations that there has been tampering. But having said that, in this low, very, very low polling percentage, if the election commission stands by, some of the complaints are sustained and I think some of the votes are declared, what might happen is that the Ashraf Ghani's vote share might go below 50.6, because 50.6 and 49.9 is a very small percentage. So if that happens, then they would have to go for a runoff. And that could be a different ball game, because this is a low, very, very low voting percentage. So if they go for a runoff, there may be. What is important is that ever since Hamid Karzai left and this sort of a thing came, because that particular election was very, very important. And in fact, the first round of presidential election in 2014 was extremely credible. It was only in the second round that you had massive allegations or things like that. To my mind, Afghanistan needs an electoral process which is seen by everyone to be credible and impartial, because once an ordinary Afghan starts realizing that he or she has the power to change governments, you will see that the support base for Taliban eroding, because Taliban has primarily recruited a large number of locals by telling them that these governments are puppets in the hands of foreign powers. Now that propaganda which they have been carrying out will lose its strength the moment an ordinary Afghan starts seeing that he or she can change the government. But that has unfortunately not happened. Now this is the second election which is now again being contested, and if this sort of contestation goes on at a time when US administration is already bypassing the Afghan government and negotiating with Taliban, thereby eroding the state of the elected government in Afghanistan. Now if you have tumult and if you have contestations where people contest the legitimate authority itself, I'm talking of the democratic forces, then of course Taliban has always been contesting the democratic authority, saying that they are no elected government, they're just puppets of US and we will talk only to US. Now if the democratic opposition also starts contesting the legitimacy, then there is a problem. It's actually a serious issue, and I think a time has come when the international community should come out with some solutions. Either we should hold elections under international supervision or something like that, so that some amount of credibility is there, because they have an independent election commission, but every time there are accusations of tampering and rigging and things like that. So I think that we need to get rid of, because for Afghanistan to stabilize, it's very, very essential that the election process is seen as credible and impartial.
Okay, so the election process and the entire democratic setup needs to be not only be credible but also seen to be credible. General Sivach, your views on the present situation?
Vishal, see, the present situation seemingly looks to be very fluid. One good point which has happened, there is no doubt what my co-panelist also has advocated, that this time Ashraf Ghani has got more than 50% in first round. So 50.62, whereas Abdullah has got 39.52. So the point is, he is just gone over 50%, and if it remains above 50%, there is no requirement of second round. Now if it comes down, that's how Abdullah is encouraged to raise certain complaint, so that somehow this comes down below 50. and thereafter once the second round take place, then it is anyone's game. It has been seen last time. You know, who was winning first time may not win the second round. So this is what is the complexity of this present situation is there. But as far as we are concerned, the whole world is concerned, everyone wants stability in Afghanistan. If the peace talks have to go to some sort of solution between US and also Taliban, there is a requirement of a stable Afghan government, because whatever it may be, Afghanistan government has to come involvement into a peace talks. You know, initially the peace talks will only take place between Taliban and the US. But finally, you know, they have to rope in the Afghanistan government, because that is how the thing will function. So to my point, you know, it taking 40 days, this is a period of uncertainty. Okay. If the elections again become, you know, null and void because it is below 50%, and then there is a requirement of you know, election taking place again, the second round, then the, you know, uncertainty will increase. Okay. I hope and pray that it doesn't happen. Stability is required, because my main issue is, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, he has already made up his mind to withdraw from Afghanistan. In case if he withdraws and some sort of a pact is signed between Afghanistan, between US and Taliban, if there is uncertainty of the government in Afghanistan, this will bring everything to null. Okay. So therefore, there is a requirement, there is a stable government in Afghanistan when the US is trying to exit from Afghanistan. Okay. So this can only happen in case Ashraf Ghani gets more than 50% and there is no requirement of second round.
Okay, so the void which, you know, unfortunately will be there if at all the situation becomes more complex is something which nobody in the entire world would be looking at right now. But Mr. Sajjanar, let me, you know, bring in the India angle here now in this situation, because for us, Afghanistan is a very important neighbor, and India has done its bit as far as, you know, giving relief to the war-torn country is concerned. But there are too many stakeholders out there. And in the present situation, as Mr. Bansal was also pointing out, you know, Taliban, which does not recognize these elections, also has a stake there, and the United States being in talks with Taliban, but surpassing the elected government. Right now, the elections are going on. Both the contenders for the post of president are accusing each other. So it's in this particular situation, from India's point of view, how should we look at it? How should India look at it?
Well, you know, as far as India is concerned, we have invested very significantly as far as Afghanistan is concerned. We have invested not only economically, but a lot of political and diplomatic capital has gone into it in terms of bolstering the regime in Kabul. And we have been against any interaction, any talk, any conversation, any dialogue with the Taliban. And those parties, you know, of the international players, whether it is Russia, whether it is Iran, who were with India in supporting the Northern Alliance in the 90s against the Taliban, they have also slowly and gradually, for their own reasons, they have also drifted away, and they have also started talking to Taliban. Iran wants to talk to Taliban so that, you know, the United States can be pushed out. So also Russia, for its own reasons, and it considers that the Islamic State is a much bigger threat than Taliban. So it has, you know, opened its also talks and negotiations with Taliban since 2007 itself. And also it is going through Pakistan. So I would say that at the moment and for the last few years, India has not really had very strong cards in its hand as far as Afghanistan is concerned. We have been fully with the Afghan government in Kabul, and whether it is our investment, financial investment of about $3 billion, more than $3 billion, in terms of setting up more than 200 schools, in terms of hospitals, whether it is the infrastructure, Zaranj-Delaram Road, or it is the transmission line, Pule Khumri, or more recently, whether the completion of the Parliament building or the Salma Dam, or which is known as the Afghanistan-India Friendship Dam. So, you know, we have gone in terms of making the lives of the Afghan people better. And I think this is definitely having an impact. If you go to, you know, there have been a large number of surveys that have been conducted, which says that India is the most well-loved and well-liked country. But that is soft power. How do you translate soft power into hard power? I think that is really the challenge as far as India is concerned. So what we need really to do is to work with all the other regional partners, which we are doing now, whether it is Iran, whether it is the United States. Although we might not be at the high table in Doha, we might not be at the high table when the Moscow format talks take place. But otherwise, we are in touch with all countries because we have strategic interests. Pakistan wants strategic depth in Afghanistan. We have strategic interests that it should not come under Taliban. It should not come under terrorist forces' influence, because we've faced the brunt of that in 1999. We have economic interests. So what we are keen to see, the final result in Afghanistan, an Afghan-led, Afghan-controlled regime in Afghanistan, a peaceful regime, which is a secular regime, which is a stable regime. And that is what we have been working for in terms of our negotiations. The only thing is that when America, we are happy that America is there because it gives stability as far as Afghanistan is concerned and the region is concerned. And it's a matter of concern for us that America wants to leave, have a deal with the Taliban, because I think Taliban, we have found, is not a trustworthy partner. Anything that they say about the ceasefire, about the fact that they will not allow Al-Qaeda, they will not allow the territory of Afghanistan to be used for terrorist purposes against other countries' interests. I think these commitments cannot really be taken at face value. And at the first available opportunity, Taliban could be expected to go against their commitments. So I think we really have to try and protect our strategic security economic interests by reaching out to all the regional players and partners, and of course including the United States.
Okay, Mr. Bansal, specifically not only on the situation present right now, but also the Taliban angle, as Ambassador Sajjanhar pointed out.
See, from India's point of view, Afghanistan is extremely significant. Besides the investments that we have made it, please understand Afghanistan's security directly impinges on India's security. If Taliban comes to power in Afghanistan, it will have a direct bearing on us. And so I think the defense of Afghanistan has a direct impact. And what is happening right now actually weakens the security of Afghanistan. Because firstly, we have US talking to Taliban, which to my mind is an extremely wrong step from India's point of view, because any talks with Taliban weakens the legitimate government in Afghanistan. And now you have an election which is actually being contested, which further weakens the elected government. I'm not trying to say who wins the elections, whether it is Ashraf Ghani, Abdullah, anybody would have been good. But you need an elected government in Afghanistan which is strong, because that has the support of the people of Afghanistan. Now, if you have an extra regional power, constitutional power like Taliban or something which is coming to power, because if the legitimate government weakens, Taliban gains. And Taliban gains, and Taliban comes to power, which Pakistan has been wanting. See, firstly, Taliban's gaining stature has two implications. Firstly, when Taliban gains stature, Pakistan gets a role in Afghanistan for two reasons. Because if US is negotiating with Taliban, it's negotiating via Pakistan, because most of the Taliban leadership is in Pakistan. The second is Taliban has been nurtured by Pakistan and ISI. So if Taliban gets a stake in the power in Afghanistan, then it has a stake in Afghanistan ruling structure, and that is counterproductive. All our investment, everything goes for a six. And the second is the Taliban is not a normal regime. If it comes to power, it would be an ideological regime which is not going to be content with spreading its influence within the geographical frontiers of Afghanistan. It would want to spread its ideas, thoughts beyond Afghanistan. And that has a serious problem for us, because that sort of a regime will not stay quiet within Afghanistan. It will like to transform regimes all around. It will affect Iran, it will affect Central Asian states, it will even affect India. And you will have Taliban supported elements moving into India, and that will directly affect us. So we will need to counter it. And I think it is in India's interest that a strong, democratic, Afghanistan stabilizes, and to that extent I think we must, if US or somebody else is not taking initiative, we must take some initiative so that different warring political actors agree on some sort of a solution to the elections, because an election has been contested, conducted, and if they want to contest it the manner, the legitimate or constitutional means are there. But once the results are out, I think all actors must give an affidavit that they will accept it, and then they'll abide by it, because let democracy in Afghanistan take roots, and that is actually in our strength, that is in our interest, and that will weaken Taliban to a very great extent.
Okay. General Sibach?
Vishal, see, the writing on the wall is very clear. The point today is that America is only negotiating with Taliban. Every time we are talking about that India wants that the talk should be Afghan controlled, Afghan owned and Afghan led, which is not happening on ground. We must understand that. And we have been talking that we are trying to ensure that India's strategic interests are taken care of when the talks are taking between Taliban and US, which are not taking place. Point is, as on today, we have to be very alert. Everything which is happening with the talks between Pakistan, between US and Taliban, it is all orchestrated by Pakistan. It is Pakistan which have been made use of it, because most of the Taliban leaders and control is by Pakistan. And Pakistan's main aim is that they want a regime in Afghanistan which looks after the interest of Pakistan and not the interest of India, because they want a strategic depth. So the beginning is that in case these talks are going between Taliban and US and some sort of solution is found out, and finally Americans decide to exit from Afghanistan by 2020, it will not be very good for us unless we become also a serious partner. Now the requirement is the ground reality must be understood by India, and we must now become very active. How we need to do it, I unfold it. One is very clear that we are got a strategic interest in Afghanistan. We are the largest regional donor. $3 billion has been invested in Afghanistan for infrastructure building and capacity building. Especially Parliament House has come, Salman Dam has come, then you can say the road which has been, also Dalaram road which has been built. So number of hospitals have been made, number of institutions, academic institution is there. 10,000 children have been giving scholarship. Their training of Afghan military as well, police personnel is in India. So there is a bondage which has taken place between Afghanistan and India. And for India, Afghanistan is strategically very important. But the way things are happening, we will lose out, because the talks are going between Taliban and Americans, and in case Taliban comes into Afghanistan, which will happen otherwise, why talks are taking between Taliban and Afghanistan? Because Taliban and America. So America has realized the importance of Taliban. In case Taliban comes into power, we have to be very responsible. Now what we need to do is 2-3 things. One is we must also open a front. It may not be direct, but indirectly. The intelligence agency must ensure that in case Taliban comes into power, all administration and infrastructure which has been built up, they are taken care of. The security point of view is taken care of. It should not happen the Taliban coming into power and we lose out everything. So this has to be a backdoor diplomacy, security agencies and int agency making sure some sort of doors are open with Taliban. Though on front we keep on saying it should be Afghan led, Afghan controlled and Afghan owned, but on ground let us open the front. Let us ensure we tie up with Iran, we tie up with Russia, tie up with USA, we remain significant and also remain you can say relevant in Afghanistan, which is a requirement of the day.
That's a very interesting aspect. And before we bring this to an end, Mr. Sajjanar, concluding comments from you on the aspect of India staying relevant and significant as far as the Afghan theatre is concerned. But remember, our official line has always been that the talk should only be with the Afghan-led and Afghan-controlled process.
Absolutely. I think this is the official line, the so-called party line, so to say. But, I'm certain, I don't have the slightest doubt, having been in the government for such a long time, that, of course, as far as all the regional players are concerned and the United States, we are in touch, we are in very active and close contact. Secondly, I am certain that there have been some back channel communication with Taliban also at certain levels. It is being established, it is going on.
Okay.
So I think it is at different fronts. Some of these fronts might be visible, might be available. Some of these fronts we might not know about it, but I'm sure that the intelligence and the government in India, we are working on it. I think what our main concern and objective is basically that the benefits and the advantages of the last 20 years in terms of the establishment of the democratic setup, in terms of the power and the empowerment of the women, the gender equality, and all the benefits that have come to the society, to the country, that they should not be dissipated, they should not be frittered away when any other government comes. You know, if it is Mr. Ghani's government which continues, it is very good. But after the withdrawal and after some sort of an agreement between the United States or whatever is the dispensation, that it stays stable, it stays secular, it stays democratic. I think the benefits, advantages of last 20 years, that should not be frittered away.
Okay, so there it is. As our panelists have pointed out, the entire process of election, which is underway in Afghanistan, should clearly go ahead and ensure that the roots of democracy